I'm Dodge Feeler, and this is The Biology of Becoming, where we bridge science and spirit, and we ask what it takes to stay human in the middle of it. We talk parenthood and building things, spirituality, frontier medicine, longevity, and the one that matters most, how to live well, how to taste the spice of life and still find it in the
Hello,
mundane.
everybody. My name is Dodge Feeler. I am the host of The Biology of Becoming. And today I have Fiona Chin. She has been a naturopath for 23 years. And her main focus is actually kidneys as a kidney coach. And her website is Kygenesis, which we will get a little farther into later. But just sort of a cold open, and then we'll hear a little more about you. There's a lot of different organs you could choose. There's a lot of different specialties you could choose. But of all the things in medicine, you chose kidneys and you stayed on that for 23 years. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny. So back in 2000, and I apologize, I said to you before, I've got this Doberman next to me. He's chomping away on this disgusting pill stick. And if I take it off him, he's going to cry. That's going to be even crazier. So if you hear crunching in the background, it's my dude. He's having
That's all right.
He's on board for the podcast. So back to kidneys. So, I had a big natural therapies clinic in 2008, and my then husband, now ex-husband, was writing ebooks and researching what topics, and he'd done thyroid, and he'd said to me, what should I write about next? And just at the same time, my nana had given me her blood tests. She was going in for a hip replacement, and I looked at them and I said, has anyone told you you're in stage 4 kidney failure or kidney disease?
Mhm.
And she said, no. And I said, well, you've got stage 4 kidney disease. You need to go back to your doctor and check the anesthetic and the medications and the, hip replacements, all okay with that. And so she went back and she said, why is my granddaughter telling me I have kidney disease and why haven't you flagged it? And he said, we don't tend to flag people about kidney disease because there's nothing we can do. Dialysis transplant will flag you when you get into kidney failure at stage 5, and we'll plan from there. I was horrified. So I said to Duncan, I reckon kidney disease, right? Because, you do all this research to see who your competition was. And no one was really talking about it then because of this narrative that there's nothing you can do, that you wait until you're in failure, transplant or dialysis. And even when I studied my naturopathic degree, we got into the basics of kidneys, hydration, your electrolyte balance and all of that sort of stuff, but we never dug into how to really support people with kidney disease. So Duncan went on and wrote an ebook. Then we started to see a lot of people coming through the clinic with kidney disease, and we got good at treating it. So that was it. So the ebook sat around forever. And then during COVID, we went into manufacturing supplements because people were having a hard time getting really good quality, and they were having to buy 17 different supplements to get what we were trying to put into 2. So that was the birth of Kidney Coach.
That is phenomenal. And then with the supplements now, I'm going to guess this is an international brand at this point.
Yeah. So the bulk of our clients are in the US. Most are coming out of New York. So during COVID, and you and I have spoken about this a bit in the background, I put up a post, I was like, we need to manufacture the supplements because Chinese herbs are quite big for their longevity properties and supporting kidneys. That's a lot where a lot of your good natural medicines come from, other Chinese herbs like astragalus and Romania and those sort of things. So problem with a lot of Chinese herbs are, though, they're very contaminated with heavy metals, and people don't know how to read dosaging, and you need proper therapeutic doses. And people were emailing us saying it's really hard to find the herbs. We're having to buy like all the herbs separately, then, the nutritional formula, and it's costing us a bomb. And so I said to Duncan, we probably should manufacture these and make that. I have no idea how to do that. I'd run lots of businesses manufacturing, especially in a country that's not mine. But you know how it is. You learn on the fly. So we found good quality FDA approved, and TGA, because TGA have the highest standards in the world, that were approved TGA, which is the Australian version of the FDA. And we started making them. We had a really big list that we'd cultivated from 2008 up until 2021. And I did the maths. We remortgaged our house to fund it. And I did the
Wow.
maths and I went, even if 2% of the list buy, we'll be able to pay the mortgage back in 3 years. 20% of the
Mm,
list bought and the rest is history. So, and then
wow.
we've been doing that ever since and improving the formulas and adding to it and then building a community behind it. So that was the story of Cargenesis.
That is phenomenal. What an amazing story. And thinking back, just I spent a lot of time in the ICU, so I spent a lot of time with nephrologists. And
Uh,
what
you
you
know,
said, that it really is not. I mean, it turns into using diuretics, slowly into peritoneal dialysis, onto all the things until, I mean, most of the time they don't make the transplants. Of course, there's also usually so many additional comorbidities, and
cardiovascular comorbidities are
yeah,
the thing,
yeah,
aren't they?
the
That's what gets people with kidney disease.
diabetes. Hmm.
Hmm.
So that's fascinating. And obviously it's funny. Our conversation is actually not as much about the side. I mean, I have a few that I want to chat about, but it's not as nerdy down the science hole that we could easily go down. Uh, I am curious. Just we'll touch on peptides, but I guess now that there are some peptides that are they're more readily available.
Yeah.
I'm curious. What's your favorite one for kidneys?
Yeah, it really varies. I think I heard you in a podcast I was listening to where you're like, "I think I'm, like, coming past my season of peptides,"
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and I listened to that and I was like, "Yeah, man, I sort of feel you." I mean, they're amazing, right? We know they're these amazing compounds
Absolutely.
and they work, but people love the quick fix, and, I
Exactly.
don't love a quick fix. Kidney disease, like you've mentioned, the comorbidities, we know that high blood pressure, diabetes, leading cause of kidney disease. I'm all about fixing that and putting the handbrake on stuff. That being said, SS31 does seem to
Dude,
work
yeah,
pretty well. It's probably one of my all-time favorite peptides.
yeah.
Big Pharma's got it now, so, you can't compound, it's harder to get. I don't know how you guys are doing that,
Mhm.
but SS31, and from Austin, I love bioregulators, so I will use a lot of, like, Vesigen to try and get blood
That's a
flow
good
into the tissues because kidneys are so
yeah,
vascular. And then the orals, the Nature's Marvels like Pilotax, kidney, bioregulator. So I use a lot of bioregulators in clinic because in Australia that's easier. Peptides are
it's
really
easy to
hard
get
for
to.
me. I mean, I'm working with doctors, but it's still a really hard slog. So, unless I'm working with my US patients, so it would be that. And then my other all-time favorite peptide is Clotho protein peptide 1, Clotho protein peptide 6.
Yeah,
I did a call with my kidney community last Saturday and a lot of them are on clothoprotein peptide 1. They're all end stage, they're stages 4, 5, they're EGFRs. We're trying to keep them off dialysis. So their EGFRs are sitting around 15 to 30 is generally where that population sits.
mhm,
And being an RN, no one wants to be on dialysis. Like that is like you may as well go to jail. You're trapped to
yeah,
a machine and your life revolves
yeah,
around it. You've got, ports and PIC lines
mhm,
getting infected, all of that stuff. I don't need to tell you, but
absolutely.
trying to
No,
keep people off dialysis is, a thing, and I get it. So, clothoprotein peptide 1 is sort of a global healer. A lot of my guys are on that. But if the kidneys are very diabetic related, or if there's a lot of fibrosis in the kidneys, so that, they're really the tissue's quite stiff, clothoprotein peptide 6. And the results I'm getting are amazing, like, and
awesome.
it's funny, the kidney changes, the movement in EGFR will come a little later, but you'll see hemoglobin levels go up, EPO normalize, red cell counts go back up into the normal range. You'll see like all the markers around that are kidney disease will start to normalize. Blood pressure will come down, blood sugar will start to regulate, bun levels go down, protein spillage stops, and then people will be like, "My skin looks amazing. My hair's all thick." One patient was like, "My eyelashes have got thick," and then this other patient who has a autoimmune driven kidney disease, all the blood vessels as part of the vascular stuff behind a cornea had changed division. So she'd started to go
Wow,
blind in eye, and all of the tissue behind had gotten hard, and they were like, "You're probably going to lose sight in the cornea." Anyway, her vision she thought it got worse, so she went in to see the specialist. Her vision had improved, her script had gone up, and
wow,
then when they checked, the whole corneal disease scarring had gone. So the
wow.
ophthalmologist was like, "What have you done?" And she said, "The only difference was
That
clothoprotein
is
peptide 1."
that is phenomenal.
So,
And funny
they're
enough,
the kind of things I see with clotho, that
yeah.
Clotho's my baby. I've been obsessed with Clotho since I learned about it from a nephrologist probably like 20 years ago. And I've been, obviously working with the team. We've finally got that out to market. We're manufacturing it. We're making it. People can get it. And then to see these results, like I'm so excited about that. So yeah,
That is phenomenal.
they're the ones I'd use the most. I've, like you, pared my whole peptide regime right back. The only one I really take at the moment is Clotho Protein Peptide 1.
That's beautiful. No, I'm actually about to get a hold of someone that we both have met at the conference. So I'm pretty excited to try it. I'm due to check my labs, but my kidney numbers have improved greatly since I chose to quit drinking myself to an oblivion and
Yeah, right.
started being a little smarter with things like androgens. So blood pressure has been better, which obviously business running and things like that, that's kind of added to it. But, and that kind of takes me to the next spot. Where are my questions here? Okay, here we go. So you've been doing this for 2 decades. You have a community, you have a brand, and I've had a brand now for about 4 years. I've progressively grown, but nobody's telling you how to keep a company alive for 2 decades. So past the marketing, what are people not talking about to keep it alive?
Great question. I think people really underestimate the people that you work with and the staff. There's that great book written by it's called Tribal Leadership, the guy that helped Zappos get to where it was. And I forget his name, and I should know that because I've met him in person, but I've
Wow.
worked for other companies where the morale of the staff is subpar, and then you end up getting people, we call them like stage 2s in the tribal leadership thing, where they're bitching about the bosses at the water cooler. And it becomes this, do you know? And I know your personality, you're perfect to create and cultivate like staff that just love you. And I'm so lucky, like Kidney Coach, I still work with my ex-husband, so he and I still run the company together, even though we're not together anymore. So there's that. So we have had to really practice fostering a good working relationship, that like they will test you, right? So there's that. And then I'm so blessed. My staff are amazing. I've got 3 permanent girls that work with us. They're all naturopaths. I'm not a micromanager. I really like to just give people as much information as possible, find out what they love doing, and then empower them to do it. And they become like the masters of it, and then hopefully reward them and support them as they need. And they just make running the whole company so much easier because I don't need to worry about them. They go above and beyond. They are always on top of everything. Um, I don't have to worry about that stuff. So what it's like being a business owner. You can, and I fall into this category, you can over micromanage everything and get stressed about everything because it's your baby. And when you have people in place that you trust implicitly like that, and it's been a hard lesson for me to learn, Dodge, because I am a bit of a controlly person that wants to check everything. But when you've got people like that, you can just what's the word I'm looking for? You can delegate to people that are far better at me at doing those things. I don't want to do the stuff that they do. So then I can focus on what I'm really good at. So then I think that's made a massive difference because I don't feel, this is the first company I don't feel stressed about, and it sort of just works. And it's because the stuff that I don't want to do is delegated. Duncan is really good at the stuff that I'm not good at. He's really good at the marketing and AI and building out like automation sort of stuff using coding and all of that sort of stuff. I'm good at the staff stuff. I'm good at, the podcast and being the front facing person, the formulations, paying the bills, all of those kind of things. I tend to do that. Then we've got the customer service team. So I think that's the first thing, a really good team of people around you that aren't at the water cooler, bitching about things, but genuinely enjoy being part of the brand, because especially if they're front facing, like, they need to have good communication. So I think that was the first thing that I think made a big difference. Did you want to drill down on any of that, or you want me to keep going on all the other things?
I think the only spot that I'd be interested in is being a provider. It is hard when you have spent a long time learning how to really take care of your patient, really have good bedside manner, which in my case now it's Zoom manner, but I've always been pretty good at bedside. How are you able to kind of, I use let go and surrender a lot, whether it's spiritually or just in life and business, but how do you learn to let go and surrender, handing that over to someone and trust that they're going to take good care of those patients that come through?
Yeah, and that's probably the bit that I struggled with the most to start with. Um, so Rachel she does the bulk of our consults. I'll just take the really tough ones, and sometimes patients will be like, "No, we really just want to, see Fiona." That's unusual though. I think it's because I trust her implicitly. Like I know her bedside manner. We gave them all the training, but I think then there's that. Again, it's having good people around you. I never worry about that with Rach. And then if we're on a call, like, I was with my kidney community last week and they were just like, we had a consult with Rachel. We loved her, recommend her to everyone. And that will be always the feedback I get from her, always. And then I
Yeah.
guess if it ever isn't that, it's number one, having an open conversation with the provider, like what happened there, what's that about? It will often just be a personality mismatch. And then it's
Mhm.
like, okay, is that person a fit for our community? Do I need to have my staff members back, or is it about having that person's back? Do I need to go in and do it myself? 9 times out of 10, it'll be that person isn't a fit for our community. And even if I went in and did it, that they're just in that, they're in a hard place with kidney disease, but can't see a way out of it. And it's no use and nothing's going to work. And it's that rarely, I mean, that may have happened once in the entire time that we've been doing this. So I think, again, that comes back to the quality of your staff. Like if I can't trust a staff member like that, it goes back to what I was saying before, you'll end up micromanaging. And then it derails your ability to drive and build a company, I think, if you can't trust your staff, because you'll spend all your time doing the stuff that you shouldn't be doing so you can grow the business, right? It will be
Yeah.
the thing that you trip up over.
No, that's an amazing answer. It's obviously I did this podcast for anyone that's going to benefit from, but I do have a team that I can trust. I s- I'll do the backsliding, like I'll find myself when the micromanagement. I really want to let go. I really do want to. Please take over all the invoicing. Please figure out the AI things I need to do. Let me do the podcasts. Let me see, the specific patients. We haven't got a new provider yet, but I don't know. I kind of felt relaxed hearing you talk about this to know there's a way to do it, having really good training in place and yeah, learning how to trust who comes in.
Yeah, you're absolutely, trust is the big word. And training and trust. Like if you
Yeah.
really run the training and you've got people that you trust and you know that they'll go over and above and they're self-educating. Like my girls will always check in if they aren't sure. Like no one's ever going to go and override and do stuff. But but we've been doing it for so long now. That team's been in place for 5 years and it just works. So yeah, it makes a big difference. Trust, you're right. Trust is a big one. Training and trust, that's what builds that back end out to be really solid.
I have one unplanned question, but most of my team, I basically wrote out a job description, just learning how to hold a vision.
Mhm.
I write it out, say what I'm hoping for, and I'm yet to put out a job description, like an actual Indeed or, looking for someone. It's interestingly that person ends up showing up and it's an answer prayer. A
Yeah.
prayer answered is what I'm trying to say here. I'm just curious, do you have any similar stories like that or what's your story with this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm just trying to think how we set the team up. Obviously we had Duncan and myself, and then we had an initial naturopath who was a patient of mine. I'd known her for a really long time. And then she just slowly transitioned into different like as she sort of tried things on, she's like, I really like this. I don't want to do that. She got busy in her own clinic, so she didn't want to see the patients anymore. She loves answering the customer service stuff about shipping. I would rather watch
Oh,
paint dry. She loves that. So I'm like, I don't want to do that. She manages that whole back end, has built it all out, has that like great. So she sort of just filled that role by herself. And I let them dictate their hours. Like as long as it gets done, you do it whenever you want. Like she's a night owl, so she'll do it like 2 a.m. in the morning. I'll see her. She's been logged on doing stuff. Great. Then actually, and it's interesting, and this might be the case for you too, Dodge, I'm not sure, but I generally know everybody. So then Rachel came from the clinic I was working in. I had a good vibe about her. And I said to her, "You interested in taking over the consulting?" She was doing our customer service stuff, so she already knew about, she knew about Kidney Coach and all that sort of stuff. She said, "Yeah," and she was really open to being trained. There was none of my girls ever feel unteachable. Like they always like want to learn and connect
Yeah.
and find out more information. So she sort of just again transitioned herself into that role, and then we needed a new writer, and the girls were like, "We've got a friend, Libby." So I did put an ad out, and I ended up taking Libby because the girls knew her, I knew her. I don't know, there was something about that. So everyone in there I've known beforehand. That doesn't always work, but it has worked very much in this case. So yeah, you definitely everyone just fell into place as needed and has just really worked organically. And with AI and everything coming through now, our writer's role has shifted a little bit. And I had a meeting with her last Friday, and I'm like, this is what it looks like now. We need you to do more of this. And beautiful. She's like, yeah, totally up to that. I love that. So I'm like, oh, great. So my
Phenomenal.
yeah, I've just been lucky. The girls have been super flexible. Have just been, happy to sort of move and naturally grow into where we need them to be. So we've been really lucky that way.
That's amazing. No, thank you for sharing. I'm going to do a little bit of a pivot here. And
Yes.
I really love the way you actually filled this out in the form. I'm kind of handing it back to you, but you asked it yourself, money or freedom, which are you actually building for? And
Yeah, I
I,
do.
I recently read an Alan Watts quote. I'm going to probably misquote it, but he spoke about writing, what the thing that you think you want, what is it that you actually want behind it? And when he talked about money, he said, what you really want most of the time is you want freedom.
Yeah, I love Alan Watts. He's like
That's it.
he's my guru. He doesn't love Alan Watts. No, I agree. And it's funny. I have a couple of patients that are proper billionaires. Like I'm talking billionaires, private jets,
Mhm.
warehouses full of any car that you can think. And they're miserable and their health is sucky and, you know, just, recovering addictions and, whatever. I grew up with a father that was never motivated by stressed by money. His father died when he was really young and, they, probably like all the working class middle English, like that's sort of my background. But growing up, I never felt like I didn't have enough. Like my parents were like I just thought we were like middle class working. We probably grew up with a little bit less than that, but that I never wanted for anything. They were really good at that. So I sort of grew up with that abundant kind of mindset. My dad never passed on his scarcity stuff to me ever. He was really good at not doing that. But I also grew up where we grew all our own vegetables. Everything was secondhand, and that was fine. I like nice cars, and I am known as, like, Fiona 5-star. I like nice things. I'm a Tauran. I'm very classic that way, like, but I'm not overly the top materialistic, like, I live in a modest house. I do have a nice car 'cause I do, 'cause I'm a car girl, but apart from that, like, the companies make enough that I can live the lifestyle, I can travel, do what I need, but I don't have a need for anything else. I don't have kids. Maybe kids, and you can tell me, Dodge, if that's a bit different, but I've got no interest in building a property portfolio or having
Yeah.
stocks or shares. What am I going to do with it when I die? My sister doesn't
Yeah.
have kids. Like, like, as long as I've got enough to do what I need to do, fine. The rest of it to me seems stress. Like, it causes extra stress that I'm not interested in. I'm also very unemotional about money. I've spent a long time to get to that point. So, I'm always aware I can make it. If it disappears, it disappears. C'est la vie. I'll make it back some other way. I've gotten very good at just thinking about money as a currency energy
Yeah.
exchange. There are
Yeah.
some people like Tony Robbins and those guys that are amazing and have really big visions of feeding the world and things like that. As long as my Doberman can eat all organic, I can eat really well, and I can have come over to Austin, see you guys in exosomes when I need to.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I
Mhm.
don't need to conquer the world, and I don't need to
Yeah.
be a Bezos and have a private jet. Like that doesn't interest me. I've got zero interest in that wealthy bit. So it works for me. So for me, that's my freedom.
No,
Um, yeah.
it's beautiful. I, I told myself a story. I didn't want to have children. I say it all the time. I realize today I'm quite the repeater. So Mike will probably say the same thing multiple times throughout the years. But up to that point, I was very into like saving. I learned how to like do the envelopes and I had the 401ks and I did invest in stocks. And I haven't really done, I've left those kind of where they are, where I just view them as savings at this point.
Mhm.
But it hit me very strongly when I realized my business wasn't going to grow quite as quickly as I wanted it to, because I want to be present in my own life with my children. And before, when I first was meeting my current wife, I kept having like these, you can call them whatever you want, downloads or insights or whatever about a legacy, which I never really thought about much. And then it just hit me. I want a living legacy. I want to be able to
Mm.
spend that quality time with my kids, which today I have a place out in the country and I was making content with a friend. My wife was involved. And on the in-betweens, I'm going swimming and I'm spending time with my 7-month-old. And so I I did grow up a little bit in scarcity. I heard things like, we can't afford that. We don't live like that. And that's nothing against my parents. My parents actually taught me some very valuable lessons. Like my mom's the one who taught me how to start reading the ingredients on the back of
I love that.
all the food. And
Yeah.
she also taught me how to look for the coupon. And there's nothing wrong with that. So but it took me growing a little bit older to say, I actually am worthy of those things if I want them.
Mhm.
I'm also not willing to work and grind my life away anymore after spending so many long hours in hospitals. So yeah, we were very much on the same page, and I knew that was going to be a really awesome one. But yeah, that taste of freedom that no country can take away from you, no governmental authority can take away from you, where you get to go put your feet in the soil and know that you are sovereign. It's something that just cannot be taken away, even if by death. You know.
I totally agree. And, we don't know. I mean, you've met me, so I walk with crutches and, like all of that sort of stuff. Like, and that's probably been a redefining thing because I did go through a phase where I was doing business coaching and how to build $1 million businesses. And great, we've sort of got that now. But this one did it all by itself. Like, we didn't grind for this. It just poof. Like,
Yeah.
it happened when I stopped trying and just let things be, was when it happened, which is interesting. Um,
Hmm.
and the whole company runs, it has that sort of vibe about it. I'm not pushing uphill like I used to, which I'm sure is why I ended up with an autoimmune disease. And I used to work, 14-hour days, 7 days a week to get my self-worth through being valued by other people. I 100% did that and wanted that that lifestyle because I was in that where, you know, your self-worth equals your net worth. What a bunch of fucking bullshit. If
It's
you
total
excuse my
bull.
French, but if you how much wealth is it that you can put your feet in the sea and the soil and be with your 7-month-old? There is no greater wealth than that. And so for me, my wealth is I'm able to do these amazing things for my health that then if what works,
Yeah.
I get to pass on to my patients, which is my living legacy. That's part of Kidney Coach. You get to play with my dog and sit outside in the garden and like that. If I die tomorrow, fabulous. Like I was living my life. I wasn't like you say, grinding away. And being in hospitals, like that would be a pretty big wake up call being in the ER. Like that
Yeah.
that's a good thing of how not to live your life,
Yeah.
right?
No, the things you're talking about, though, I was looking at your profile again today, just getting ready, and I was just multiple photos of your feet. It was like pictures of your feet and a book on the water. I
Yeah.
mean, like that stuff is the essence of life. It's you're just getting to thoroughly enjoy what you're doing, escaping the rat race, or at least entering the rat race on your own terms.
Mhm.
So, we both go with freedom, and I love what you mentioned about when you quit trying, your business became what it is. The universe has a funny way about things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got a really interesting sense of humor. I actually wonder, I've been starting to get downloads that maybe that is what I need to do with my health as well, is like kind of just to stop trying. So
Yeah,
I'm always doing
yeah,
the latest cutting edge stuff, and I'm always doing stuff. But yeah, I was sort of like, man, maybe it's the same here. But yeah, Kidney Coach was literally, we had it, Duncan had it, he had this huge list and we were just selling ebooks and then we rewrote it. Then we're like, well, like we got feedback, like, we should make the company. We had the list, we did that. And then it sort of, then people came in to support it. it's never felt like any of the other businesses that I've run where there was a bit of a grind or, there was stress. Like this one is the least stressful business and probably the most enjoyable. The community is so beautiful. And yeah. And then, all these amazing opportunities, like we write chapters for Spring and 8. Like it's been the one that's also given back the most, again,
Yeah.
without doing much. So it is, you're right. The universe is interesting how it works that way. And people are like, can you replicate that? Is there a model? I'm like, there's not. It just literally, I can't tell you how that happened. It was just, this company is very much, I go with the flow. I do whatever is put in front of me. And it's a very
Yeah.
intuitive business. If something feels good, I'll do it. And if it doesn't, I don't. Like
Yeah.
that's how we do it.
What is your energy willing for you to do today?
100%. That's all I've got left with, managing my own health. So it's just
Yeah,
like,
of course.
that is how I tend to do life now. Like, normally I have a piano lesson this afternoon. I was meant to go I had appointments this morning and I woke up this morning and it's windy and rainy. And I was like, you know what? Too much stress. I don't want to be running back to sit on a podcast with you. I want to be super present, have my
Yeah.
breakfast. So I canceled everything because I'm like, I don't have the energy to do that. I'm going to spread myself too thin and then I
Wow.
don't have enough to give into the things that I want to give to, which was to sit down and connect with you. So yeah, I very much live my life like that. But that's been, having this autoimmune disease has been a gift that way, because it asked me to live my life like that all the time. Otherwise I end up in trouble.
Yeah. On my own world of overuse of like stimulants and things in as a hair restoration surgeon,
Oh,
something
wow.
just luckily broke inside of me where I mean, when it's indicated, I can push harder for a day, but it has to be indicated, or I have to trust it's going to be taken care of appropriately, and letting go of it, and it keeps working. So
Isn't that funny? And it does work. And I mean, it's not to say like the Bezos and the Robbins of the world, like they're needed and they obviously have a drive for that stuff. I just don't.
mm,
Like on my
yeah,
deathbed, I'm not going to be like, I'm so glad I grinded. I would be like, I'm so glad I, helped people with kidney disease, sure. But also, I'm going to Mongolia and stuff. Like, it got to experience the world, got to connect
yeah,
with people like you, and you'll
yeah,
be like, I'm so glad I got to spend that time with my son. Like, they're the things, at least for me, that
yeah.
matter. So,
No, I mean, that night that we all got to hang out after the conference, after all the excitement, like I just remember over and over again thinking like, how did I get to be right here with these humans? Like, I felt so fortunate.
I had
And
the same feelings. Yeah.
like, she's all the way from Australia. And I kind of felt like I knew you in some way, which being interested in the thing I'm interested, it's not really a surprise. We are connected by a string when it comes to consciousness aspects of things. So
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be back in Austin next year. You guys won't get rid of me
I'm
that easily.
no, we look forward to seeing you. And I guess, kind of touching on that, both already kind of touched, kind of a little bit tired of having to stay so on top of the new peptide, all the things, which I'm still doing some off and on, stagger them. When I don't feel like taking supplements on a certain day or injecting myself, sometimes I take weeks,
Yeah.
because I was chasing it so hard after some mold issues and recovering my brain. I don't feel better. And then I suddenly quit worrying about it as much. And I feel pretty amazing most days, but that kind of leads into what you said, the peptides storm. What's actually real and what's being oversold right now?
Oh, man. I'm in Australia. Like, speaking actually to people we know this morning on our group chat, and they were just like, she had a couple of posts removed from Australia on TB 500. It's just on TB 500. Australia is
Wow.
just slamming down on everything. Of course, my conspiracy brain goes, I get the Chinese cheap stuff, but if you look at some of that stuff that gets tested, some of the Chinese stuff tests better than the stuff that was coming out
Mm,
of the compounding pharmacies. It's not all bad.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
sometimes if you've
for
got a
sure.
good supplier, let's face it, they're the same people that are sending it to all the other people that are saying they're manufacturing out of the US or, out of the compounding
Yeah,
pharmacies, or coming from the same places. I think I think people are being sold a easy quick fix, and that, as you and I know, it's never that. It's what we're talking about. It's the richness of life and connecting to all of that. And always worry that peptides are I don't want them to become another dopamine hit where people are disconnected. I
Yeah.
don't want them to become a scroll. You know, I'm looking at what's happened in relationships where people can't stay in a relationship anymore because of FOMO and scrolling. People can't watch movies anymore because it's not 30 seconds long on TikTok. Like,
Mhm.
and I feel like peptides have fallen into that. Um, I I do get my gears get grinded when a gym bro's on there talking about menopausal, premenopausal women and what they should and shouldn't take. I'm like, I literally feel my blood boil. So, you know, I struggle with that because I go, these are medicines, you know, they are powerful signaling molecules. You need a
Mhm.
clean signal. There's no point putting in a peptide if your sleep is shit, you're not eating well. And my first sort of point on, you know, when I was talking at the conference in Austin is you can't heal a dysregulated nervous system. It just, if you're in fight or flight, it's very hard to get the body to move into healing mode. And there's peptides can't shortcut that. You can use Cmax and Celank and all those things to help try and calm it down, but they aren't a shortcut. And I am worried that people are dopamine hitting with peptides and stacking. And it's only because I, you know, mentor some guys and I'm in groups where I just watch people have what I call a kitchen sink protocol where they are on 50 million things. And while I do think there are more studies than we are told with peptides, the Russians have been using them in protocols for a very long time, and there is quite a lot of human Russian data. It's just not been translated into the West. But there aren't a lot of studies crossing a whole pile of peptides. We don't know if you stack 50 million together what it does.
A lot of different signals.
Yeah, it's a lot of signals. And I'm like, we can probably over signal and we can probably push pathways too much. And I do have concerns about over signaling in a body that is fragile. And as you know,
Mhm.
I work with the very sick people. So I'm always like generally 2, maybe 3 bioregulators, injectable, maybe 1 or 2 orals, and then maybe a peptide. That's a big stack for me to put into people.
Yeah.
And people are, we want to do more. And I'm like, I need to know how you respond. And, you know, I need to get a good signal before we start putting in, you know, the remodulators and things like that. So as far as being oversold, I think they're all oversold. I think they're all overpromised.
Yeah.
But then that being said, I really love microdosing GLPs. They'll downregulate your histamines, and they're amazing for people with food noise addictions who have done all the right things and can't move weight. I don't think they're a
Mhm.
shortcut for those people. I think they're a tool. But it's nuanced, isn't it? You know, like KPV, you know, put that in with someone that's not quite ready. You make them worse. LL37, you can reactivate viruses. Formosan
Yeah.
alpha 1 in high doses seems to push an autoimmune reaction. Low doses, it might pull it back in. It's nuanced. So I think, you know, you and my friend has a particular dislike for a certain chiropractor who loves to put up posts with no actual science behind it. And then I spend my entire life with patients going, no, you can use TB and BPC together. It's just that study never existed. But I think that's the thing. It's been oversold by people without the nuanced medical understanding that someone like you or I have,
Yeah.
that that we don't know. We genuinely don't know. When you stack 50 million things together and you're pushing signals in a fragile body, what will happen? And if you don't have a clean signal, what's the point? That feels like a dopamine shortcut to me. And are we just now working on placebo, which is extremely strong, or are we getting
40%.
a better result?
Yeah.
So they're all my caveats. That being said, I love them. They're amazing when they're used properly, but um, I just think it comes down to the dopamine thing. I think when you really dig into a lot of people are just getting now their taking supplements, they can inject a
Yeah.
thing, and that's my concern.
Yeah. I think it's a fair concern, and especially some of the biohackers that love to like post their 20 peptides that they're doing all at once. It's crazy, but I think it isn't overly complicated if you are doing some smaller stacks. It's what's the mechanism of action? You know, if you're doing like a GH secretagogue with something like BPC, you know those mechanisms. I'm also using the most basic peptides there, but you look at
Yeah.
those two, like there's really no potential for those to counterbalance each
Mhm.
other.
Mhm.
You know, like MOTS-C, SS31, pretty obvious we should not put those together, and a staggered approach is the best way. So
Correct.
it's just where influencers should not be able to sell peptides on their website. And
I agree.
I'm not 100%. I mean, I do use compounding pharmacies, but I kind of miss the days of there was like one website that you knew was relatively
Mm.
legitimate, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I've
So,
tested them. Like I run tests all the time. Like we had a compounding pharmacy here in Australia who I tested it and it was and like it had nothing in there. It had 2% of the peptide that was in there and a whole pile of heavy metals. I'm like, must be bringing in cheap Chinese stuff. They got fined and in trouble. But
wow.
I'm like, then you bring in something from China that a patient had that I tested and it tested perfectly. It was like 98%, no heavy metals. It was beautiful. And then I tend to batch test every now and then all my stuff. I bring in everything, if patients need bioregulators, you bring them in from Nature's Marvel and then those bits and pieces. But it's, the good suppliers, but Australia's really hard. It's easier for me to work with patients in the US than it
Yeah.
is here, which is tough.
Oh, man. During COVID, seeing things were not great in the US, but seeing what was happening in Australia was terrifying. Of course, we're only seeing one perspective, but any of my friends that I've made over time in Australia, it was pretty wild. And I've spent some time speaking to different nurses and other providers. And yeah, it seems like it's just very kind of scary to be pushing the frontier medicine.
It 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 is. It is scary, and it's, like it's one that I keep going, they're trying to, register naturopaths under APRA, which is where all the Chinese medicine, it has a big registering body if it does that way. And so there's a push to do it. And, like 10 years ago, I would have been prone that. I'm anti it now because we already have good regulating bodies that do it. The whole what happens when we get registered, and I've watched what happens to Chinese medicine, and it's to the point where I often think about deregistering as a naturopath. And it's, I did the extra training in Canada to be a naturopathic doctor. So I had that when I worked
Yeah.
in Canada, right? And it's
Yeah.
so disheartening because, as soon as I'm in the States or in Canada, it's, yes, Dr. Fiona, I can prescribe extra drugs and all those sort of things. And here, you know, s some people really, respect the naturopathic sort of stuff, but it doesn't come with the same authority or the same respect that it does overseas, and so I struggle with that a little bit. Um, and then, yeah, I often think, I don't know what's the point of being a naturopath because if I can't practice, all I wanna do is get patients well, right? And sometimes we need to
Yeah.
use these tools, and there'll be the thing and again, I work with a team of doctors. It's not like I'm, out here cowboying. The doctors, you can only see me if a doctor refers. They will be like, "We're sending this patient to you for a protocol," which I then write up and send back to the doctor. So they've got it all on script, and they've got a team of like generally the doctor, myself, and maybe like a really good chiro or an osteopath or a body work in there. And so there's a team, and it's a beautiful way to work, and it's really well covered. I'm not primary care physician, and it works really well. But it might come a time where I can't practice the way I need to get patients well, which is all I care about, and it might mean that
Mhm.
I deregister as a naturopath, or I move to Austin. It's one of the two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would even say in the US, there's reasons why at least people like me, who I try to stay very humble. I love Alex Heichel. You know, I mean, he's able to do things that I can't safely do as a provider, and it just makes sense because at the end of the day, it's we want to help our patients. We want to get them to the best place that they can be, whether that's using more Western medicine or using, Chinese herbs or bioregulator, exosomes, all those things. It's there. It's
Mhm.
hard to find some of the data, but we know that it's real. It's a frustrating thing, but we aren't alone. You can look back if this has been going on for pretty much ever since antibiotics became a thing.
Yeah. And like to your point, I don't know how you feel. I'd be interested because I know you work in that frontier front line as well. And I don't know, like I always have a thing of, is this patient, can I trust this patient? Can I work into this sort of scope? Am I doing the right thing? I don't like having that it's not a fear, but it's like, like, thank goodness I've got doctors that I work with. But I'm like, I'm always waiting, like
Yeah.
I remember 15 years ago, I was a big proponent of CBD oil being great for pain. And I used to do a lot of speaking to big corporate companies, and people would complain about speaking about CBD. Now that's everywhere, it's legalized.
Yeah.
that'll happen. Generally, I am sort of that further bit in front, and eventually it does all catch up. But because peptides are being so shut down and suppressed at the moment, there's that bit of like, I can't practice the way I need to. This is how I know to get my patients well. I don't know how you feel about that when you're doing it, because you've got you're an RN, so, you're under scrutiny as well about being watched about what you're prescribing. How do you deal with that? Because that's probably the thing I find most stressful.
I mean, I obviously have my worries, but during COVID, I was prescribing ivermectin, even working as a hair restoration surgeon. And I'm careful. There's a reason why I've never pushed too hard up marketing. Even what I'm doing now is more of kind of a personal brand and more of a founder than what we do in the clinic, because we're very careful. And it's even just, we are more referral based. So if a patient speaks highly of us, we're less likely to have anything to worry about. But it's also on a spiritual aspect. I have to trust, because I've tried to escape this career a couple times, and the message comes very clear: you're not done yet, sir.
Oh my goodness, me too. Do you know how many times I've retired, Dodge? This is my fourth go at. I've come out of retirement for the fourth time now. I sell my company, I do everything, and then patients get back in. And the next thing I'm like, literally after just before it happened, right before I went to Austin, I was seeing, not too many, and now I'm like I'm like, how did this happen? Like, I was meant to be semi-retired. Like, yes, the universe.
That's all
So
we're supposed to be doing, for sure.
yeah, so you're right about the trust part, but yeah, man, it can be hard sometimes.
It's again, it's scary. You have to choose like the love. We know we're doing good work. We know we're being of service to others. We're doing everything we can to take good care of them. But when you finally see like a song that I suddenly put out and hit #1, and you see I'm no longer providing, you know that I finally did escape. No, I love my patients. I truly do. So
Yeah.
kind of going to the next one though. You're writing a book for nephrologists. So just knowing kind of specialties, how they feel about, it, I've seen nephrologists that like naturopaths, but I've also seen this is woo, this is fake. What does it mean coming from you? And they're coming to you now to create this. That tells me that you have built some relationships with nephrologists that made a massive impact.
Yeah, so Dr. Israel, he's an integrative nephrologist. He and I had spoken a bit before. He had worked on the team with Gaia Herbs to put out some good stuff, so I knew he was open to it. And he reached out and said, "I'm, writing this book for Spring and Nature, be a medical text, and I'd love you to author a chapter." I ended up authoring two, because all the case studies came out of Kidney Coach, which was amazing. So there's 2 chapters in there. So yeah, I wrote. It was like I started writing 2 years ago now, and then it just takes forever to edit and put books together. And it's now written, released, and it's on pre-order. And I think everything ships at the end of this month. So yeah, pretty amazing. And I think we've been around for so long, and we've had some amazing cases. We've had patients on dialysis that were told never come off, following protocols that come off dialysis. The whole rhetoric that you can't reverse kidney disease. There's been plenty of studies published now to say that that's not true. And, where we actually are seeing a rise in numbers. And I think there's been enough cases where nephrologists have seen it, and they'll see it in a few patients where they'll say, "What are you doing?" They're like, "We're doing the stuff that Kidney Coach has suggested, and we're taking their supplements." And so you start to get these little patches of nephrologists that will have had people that have gone through our protocols, or have seen either Rachel or myself, or bought the ebook, or taken the supplements, and they have had an improvement in numbers. If you've got a nephrologist that's open enough, they'll ask, "What are you doing?" And then sometimes you'll get a nephrologist that will say, even with a rise in kidney function, that will say, "You need to come off the herbs, they're contraindicated." Again, that just comes down to the individual. I had a cancer patient, that this is sort of how it goes. And he had a incurable desmoid tumor. They just keep growing those things. You have to keep chopping them out. I put him on a protocol, and within a very short amount of time, that thing halved in size. And he went back, had a scan, and they said, "Oh, the chemo's working beautifully." And he said, "I never took the chemo." They're like, "What are you doing?" "I'm doing everything you told me not to do." It was a peptide protocol, a few other bits and pieces. And the specialist said, "I don't want to know. Just keep doing it." "What do you mean you don't want to know.
Wow.
This incurable desmoid halved in like a month and you don't want to know? I want to know. Like, what are
I
you
want to
doing?
know.
I need to tell all my
Yeah.
patients. So it's, and I talk about this in my podcast with someone that I do. When you're looking for providers, you need providers that are curious, that are asking, what are you doing? Like, you have to have that curiosity piece. Otherwise you need a new provider if they're not interested in that. So I think the short version is there's been enough people that have been interested that we've seen the change. And then the ones that aren't going to change are never going to change, right, Dodge? So
Yeah. The right
it
people
is,
are going to come to you.
yeah. So yeah, no, I've been lucky. And I think we've just been around for a long time. There's not a lot of other people doing what we do. Like, I don't know a lot of other people in the kidney space that have been around for as long as we have. So yeah, I think that helps too.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And congratulations. We'll make sure to
Thanks.
put a link up and everything when we post. And now, this makes me what I'm most excited about because you
Ooh.
told me something that's not in your bio, and that
Oh
was
no.
you being uh, you being highly intuitive. You saw some things as a kid.
Mhm.
I'm curious, one, how does that kind of live alongside of that, the science for you? And
Mm.
I'm also curious if you're willing to maybe get a little bit weirder and tell me, personally a little bit about what some of that means.
Sure. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like, I am a proper science nerd. Like, I love my science and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm also highly intuitive, so much so that I've never been able to turn that bit off. And I was lucky growing up with parents that never asked me to turn that part off or ignore it. So to give context, and we can talk about these things now, like even
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, I never spoke about this because I was worried someone's going to put me in a psych ward and lock me up. And I'd love to actually hear whether being in ER and as an RN, whether you see a lot of this stuff. But as a kid, I had an imaginary friend, as most kids do. No one sort of thinks about it. Goosey Gander, used to draw him. And mum and dad used to hear me speaking in the bedroom at night with a male voice. And they used to go, wow, Fiona and her sister really know how to get into a male voice and have a conversation. And then one night when I was a baby, about 4 or 5, my sister would have been about 2. And it's so good that my parents had this experience and not me. So it's their story. They felt a presence come into the bedroom and sit down on the bed. And my mum was like, to my dad, like, can you see that? And he was like, so she was like, get up, turn the light on. He got up, turned the light on. It didn't go away. Mum thought it was felt, not good. And so they sung to it, did the Lord's Prayer, what felt like hours, and it disappeared. So that was their experience. The next morning, and I sort of remember doing this, next morning I got up and tied my dad up with a skipping rope and put my fingers to his head like a gun. And I said, you sent my friend away. Now I have to kill you. So my parents were like, that was real. That was her imaginary friend. And then I wrote a letter about Goosey Gander going to Care Bear Land. So that was the first experience where my parents were like, okay, what we saw wasn't a thing and it was related to her imaginary friend. And then maybe when I was 8, and mum and dad always said I was an intuitive child and, highly sensitive and whatever. And then maybe when I was 8, I remember waking up and to a presence being at the end of the bed wearing like an army uniform with the whole pile of, medals and things like that. And I described it to my parents. My dad was like, that sounds like my father. So then that happened. And then that was from 8 till about 18, over the next 10 years, things would come and visit me and they genuinely weren't great things. Like, people talk about these beautiful angels. No, mine were malevolent. They would come and they'd often speak like in these languages. I'd get body slammed, choke held, and there was periods of time for like 3 to 6 months where I wouldn't sleep in my bedroom. I'd sleep on the floor in my sister's room because I was so terrified. And I remember the one I remember the most was I would have been 17. So I was older now. And I remember being in my room, the dogs were on the bed and they both got out, bolted out. I remember sitting up and something power slammed me from the ceiling and put me into a chokehold, started speaking this language. I screamed, my dad comes in and everything in the room, like poltergeist, is moving. It's like something out of a movie. And I was like, so I got into bed, slept with my mum. I'm 17, and dad slept in my bed. And he never told me, but mum told me like years later. She said he was petrified. She said everything in the room moved all night. And then my mum had a friend of hers who was quite spiritual and a bit psychic, and they got her to show me how to shut down, like, and like I didn't know about chakras then, like how to shut down chakras, run a protection, like then all these crystals came into my room. But that was the sleep paralysis. That was a normal part of my life all the
Wow.
way up until I was 24. And probably there were a couple of years where I didn't sleep. I learnt how to clear these spirits back to the light. I was like Ghost Whisperer, Jennifer Love Hewitt. That was my
Wow.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was just what I did. I could see dead people. If a patient came in and someone had just passed away, I could do all of that. And it became normal. And then one day it disappeared and it never came back. And it just shut off.
How interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know what that was. Every now and then, maybe 3 times a year, I'll have what I would feel like a presence or an entity. But
Mhm.
I'm talking it was multiple entities a night, and I was like the King's Cross station. I was just clearing things to the light. So yeah, that was my childhood all up into my mid-20s, and then it sort of just disappeared. So yeah.
Hmm. So you had whether you look at it as a gift or otherwise, but basically they would come to you not very nicely at times to be released.
Yeah. Yeah, that was I did a lot of releasing, clearing things to light, and I learned very quickly that that there were no bad spirits, because it was interesting. If
Mm.
you would say to a spirit, "How do you know you're evil or bad?" If they're presenting that way, and they look all confused, and I'm like, "You can't know darkness if you don't know the light." And generally that whole conversation, and as you're calling in their guides and angels, and I'm like, "How about I send you to a place where you'll be more loved than you'll ever be loved before?" And these dark energies would explode into light and disappear.
Wow.
It was a really cool thing, actually. Now I look back at it, but I spent, the late part of my teens and into my early 20s terrified, for most nights. And I remember actually watching the movie The Grudge with Sarah Michelle Gellar in it.
Oh my
And that
God.
was
Yeah.
close to when everything stopped. And I remember saying, if my life ever gets like this, I'm done. Like I can't do that. Like I'm on the edge of like how much like
Mhm.
horror I can take. And again, I'd gotten good at knowing there weren't any bad ones, but I was a bit sick of being strangled or spoke out in demonic languages and those sort of things.
Understandable.
So that's all disappeared. The thing that might happen now is if I do a lot of breath work, and
Mm.
I worked for Dr. Joe Dispenza for a long time, so I spent a lot of time
Really?
Yeah, I worked for Joe from 2018 all the way up into 17 all the way into COVID. So traveled, did all these events, so down that rabbit hole, advanced meditator. So yeah, I've had some very crazy things happen in meditation, and I can get being stuff come through and channel some stuff. That happens every now and then too. So that's the new thing
Yeah.
that happens.
Interesting. Yeah. It's had some pretty wild experiences with breathwork, which I want to keep it about you, but this
No,
conversation
I'd
is
love to
so
hear. I'm
fascinating.
fascinated. Tell me.
Well, the first time I ever did like holotropic breathing, I was going through a divorce and I was just, I was struggling, but I was at a place where I was ready. I was like, I'm going to die if I don't turn things around. Mentally, just the drinking, like just not picking myself up and moving on with life. And so I started doing yoga, but I went and did breath work and I was not buying any crystals or anything at this time. I hadn't really been thinking about it, but started doing the breath work and, lots of crying, immediately started feelings that I had been holding in for God knows how long, probably, from my teens. And then I just start seeing this huge amethyst rolling and looked like about what Joe Dispenza describes when you're supposed to be in the nothingness, except there was
Mhm.
this amethyst. And then I hear my grandpa, who I had a few other experiences with, his voice comes down and he's like, Dodge, you are the only one that you're going to end like you are the only person you will always be with. Everyone else will leave at some point or another. And of course, that's really hard for someone who's not very, very happy about themselves. But it just hit me. Oh, well, it's time to get to work and become a person that I love being with, which I would say 99% of the time I feel that way now.
I
But
love
I
that.
also felt him when he passed. He came to me in my sleep and I woke up thinking, no, no way. I went to school. I was about to go to nursing school and I get a phone call. I'm in class and sure enough, he had. So Very, very well. But the breath work is definitely one, or occasional psychedelics that I get quite a few interesting experiences, but not quite what you dealt with. That is the one of the best stories I've heard in a while.
Yeah, they're crazy. And it's so long ago now, and I don't experience it that I go, oh, it's easy to rationalize it off. But it's only because my
Yeah.
parents experienced and I had witnesses. And then
Yeah.
too, when I do like if I'm really in the void doing a Dr. Joe meditation or breath work is a big trigger for me. I
Mhm.
get downloads and it sounds crazy. I speak in tongues and the language is, I don't know what I'm saying. People have recorded it.
Yeah.
Dr. Joe's been in front of me when I've done it,
Yeah.
and it's a straight, it's not like a beautiful star thing. It sounds like weird bent Russian. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people understand it or they say they do, but yeah, I don't. It's just an energy that comes through and it's a very strong energy that,
Mhm.
and I have done a magic mushroom thing, and that energy presented herself to me as she
Mhm.
called herself my
Mhm.
oversoul. And she was just like, what have you done to this body? She was mortified, but she is someone you
Mm.
would not mess with. She's flying around the universe on a white horse, presents as like the Valkyrie Viking sort of stuff. And
Wow.
she says, like I say, oversoul, she speaks in that very strong, like Viking type language. And yeah, I wouldn't mess with her. She's hardcore. And I can see bits of myself in her, but yeah. So yeah,
That is
she's an interesting cat when she comes in. I'm like, whoop,
yeah.
I'm not gonna mess with that
Yeah.
woman.
Well, again, you and I are strangely together by a string, the oneness of it all. 'Cause I've spoken in tongues many times over the last 4 years. So the next time when you come to Austin, I have some ideas, and we'll all
We're
get
gonna play.
together. And yeah,
I love it. I love this. I love the synchronicity of the universe. And it was funny, I was saying to Gracie, when her and I both left and we text and she'd be like, oh, we feel lonely again. And it's, when I was doing the Dr. Joe stuff all the time, it was like they were my people and my tribe. And then
yeah,
during COVID, it was really one of the big tough things. My dad died at the same time and I went through a divorce, and as you know how that is, and then couldn't be with my people. And being in Austin was the first time hanging out with you guys where I'm like, here's my new set of
yeah,
people that just
mhm,
happen to be over the other side of the world, of course. But I'm like, they're there, like it's that.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and Gracie and I both said, oh, we feel lonely again. So it's like just making sure that we all stay connected and stuff. And,
We
back to the stuff that makes the biggest difference with people's health. It's not having a tribe and having your people, right? That makes
Wow, community is just so important.
so agree.
We probably need to do some group calls with everybody very soon.
You'll have to come. We're having coffee. We're having a
Okay,
Zoom coffee chat. So I'll add you to the group and come and have
please,
Zoom coffee with
please
us.
do.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Wow, some of the directions our conversations gone, this rabbit hole could have gone to hours, which just means we need to have more of them. But yeah, kind of to the time. It's kind of a different question, but I feel like it's very open ended. So after 20 years of what you've been doing, seeing both ways of it all, what do you know as actually true through all the illusion, all the rubbish?
I think as far as being actually true, the thing that makes it, and I'll talk about being a practitioner, the thing that makes the biggest difference is your relationship with your patients. You know how we are taught to like boundaries and whatever. The thing that makes the biggest difference is when you sit down in front of a patient and they can genuinely feel it. You mentioned the heart before, that you give a shit and that
Uh-huh.
you care. And that doesn't mean you cross the boundary and they become your best friend, but it's that genuine presence connection. And I think it's that sets up the energy for healing. And I'm very mindful of that. It's why, I try not to see more than 8 patients. 8 to 12 is a crazy week for me, a week, because I want to turn up to everyone, to have that connection, to give that energy, to give that presence. And I get the sense from you and just knowing you naturally do the same. It's what makes you a good practitioner. So I think it's that giving a shit, being there. We're not doing 15-minute consults. You're there and you're invested and you'll I always say I can't do the healing for them, but I'll be their eternal cheerleader.
Hmm.
I think that's what I've come to know as true, and maybe why the universe hasn't let me retire, because I'm good at that, or I'm at least super aware of that. That's what people need. People need someone who gives a shit. I think that's what's true as
That's
far as
something that
practitioners.
AI cannot replace.
100% Dodge. That AI can never take that. It can word it. Yes, you are absolutely right. You are right. But I'm like, it's not. There's another, there's a transfer that happens in that, and you can still get it via telehealth and Zoom, I think.
Mhm. Not as good as a big hug where you can feel the both hearts coherence and the big circle that all comes around with it. But yeah, that's even like the eye contact. It truly does make a difference, and the voice. And that's why I like having some questions for you, but I really want to avoid ever having scripts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. We
Oh,
need
this
to
is
do it
fantastic.
again.
Yes, we absolutely have to. I mean, I feel like I'm going to stop talking, but there's so many different ways we could have gone that we even just down the business side of things. So, Fiona, thank you so much for everything. We obviously will be putting links out, but what is the best way for us to reach?
If people want to know more about what we do, head to www.kidneycoach.com. You'll see there's the link to the YouTube channel and articles that we're writing, and then you can contact the support guys, and if you need me, they can get to me that way. That's the easiest way to find me.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, and we will continue the conversation. So,
Love it. Thanks,
all
Dodge.
right. I appreciate you. Have an amazing day. It's
You
morning
too.
over there. I'm about to
It
get ready
is.
to go to bed. So,
You enjoy that beautiful afternoon. I can see the sun setting behind you.
all right. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Fiona.
No worries. Bye.